I've been supportive of Equal Justice Needham since it was formed in the aftermath of the George Floyd murders. I'm especially interested in everyone having safety and economic security. I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee at EJN, where I help the whole committee look for ways to have more housing choice in Needham, and I especially focus on state legislation that can help support affordable housing in our state, including our towns. So I do other things, policy and advocacy work. One is with the League of Women Voters of Needham, where I focus on gender and racial equity issues. I'm a steering committee member for Progressive Needham, where we have a progressive agenda, encourage lawmakers to pass legislation that's progressive, and we help elect folks who want to be leaders in the progressive area, both state and locally. I'm also a town meeting member and an elected member of the Democratic Town Committee.
Hello and welcome to Moving Forward Together with Equal Justice in Needham. I'm Jim Flanagan, an EJN participant and a new town meeting member. My guest today is Heidi Frail, who was selected to the 5-member Needham Select Board in April. We would like to give Heidi the opportunity to introduce herself to Needham residents and speak more about her goals in the new position. Thanks for joining us, Heidi.
Thanks for having me.
So for starters, for those who haven't met Heidi, can you tell us about yourself, your family, and your time in Needham and your professional experience?
Well, I've been in Needham now for 18 years. Like everyone, I remember that by the age of my children when I moved in. So I have, I have 2 kids. My oldest is 20 and he is a sophomore at Northeastern. And my youngest is a junior in high school. So not so young. As I said, we've been here for 18 years. My husband, Stephen, is active in town as well. I work full time. I'm an X-ray tech. I specialize in pain. I work for Newton Wellesley Hospital, but offsite just down the street at our Wells Ave clinic, where we have pain management, spine and rehab. And I manage the radiology services that we provide on the site, as well as working clinically. I'm kind of a townie. I was born and raised in Newton, actually at Newton Wellesley, where I currently work. So I've been active in town for a while. I think, like many people, I sort of came out of the 2015 campaign season into the 2016 election, very upset and disillusioned just at the time when I was having a little bit more independence in my own life. My kids were getting older. And so began to look around to try and become more involved. For me, that after trying out a bunch of different groups, for me, the ones that stuck were the League of Women Voters of Needham, which I think is a fabulous group and everyone should be a part of because they take men and women.
Love them.
They do a ton of great education and advocacy. And it was really helpful to me to teach me how to turn my, what was like just a lot of frustration and angst into positive action that could have a positive impact. As well, I joined the Needham Democratic Town Committee and was elected as an official member soon thereafter. And then I also ran for town meeting member. And at the time of April's election, when I became a select board member, I had been, that was my second term as a town meeting member. So my 5th year.
Great. So this has been building over time. You didn't just jump into the select board out of
nowhere. No. And I, had done like little, smaller volunteer projects, with the kids' schools and stuff. But because I was working full time, a lot of that stuff happens during the day. So I wasn't I wasn't super involved then, but
Great.
this is
And
better.
big +1 of the League of Women Voters. As a new town meeting member and also getting more involved, they are such an amazing,
So great.
Just
So great. Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah. I feel very lucky to have found them, actually.
So can you tell us a little bit more about why the select board and what prompted that?
Yeah, well, so I had been working with the League of Women Voters. I was on the board. It was a great experience. And I think I just began to feel that even though I love the league, I wanted to be a little bit more hands-on, directly involved in like setting policy and rather than educating people about it. Honestly, I love the work that they do.
Yeah.
And getting people involved is great. It was a little frustrating because people, resist getting involved. So that was a little, but I wanted to be kind of more involved. And so I had in the spring, some point, I don't remember when, because it was pandemic time, I had decided to leave the board, and I did, and was looking for a new opportunity to get more sort of into the trenches, I guess, like setting policy. And this was the thing. I think that my experience has been that there is nothing more impactful than local government and local policy. So while we lament, and I especially did, as I think some of my friends thought I was completely losing my mind in 2016, thinking about the national implications and the consequences of that election. But what I realized in the course of working with the league and the DTC and in town meeting is that really the things that are the most impactful for most people are the things that are happening in their town.
Yeah.
And that if I could have a positive influence there, then that is what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's great. So you're a whole 6 weeks into it. You've got a town meeting under your belt.
Already?
Out of the
Yeah.
I think about 6 weeks. It probably seems like 6 years with town meeting already. How's it been so far? Any surprises?
It's been great. No surprises, I don't think. Fortunately, when I ran for select board, I ran unopposed. And doing that is a less stressful experience. And so I was able to do a lot of research and learning about not only sort of how the town works and the processes that they use, but also a lot of the issues. So I used that time to prepare so that I could kind of go into town meeting. Most of that work was done by the previous administration, whatever, the select board moving forward. So there was a lot for me to catch up to, but that work didn't really fall on me. And in the run up to that election, the town staff in particular, and of course, all of the folks on the select board and folks who had previously been on the select board were extremely generous with their time and knowledge, helping me to understand the issues and the implications and so on. So I felt like I walked into it, frankly, pretty well prepared. They did have a little guide that they put together. I know that, in the past, people have found that this transition could be a little bumpy. I did not find it that way. What I'm looking forward to now is that now the town meeting is over, we begin the work for the future. And that's something that I will be more directly involved in and can have an impact on.
As a new town meeting member, I was so impressed at the turn from election time to bringing on effectively 240 new town meeting members, even though some had been there, but 20% turnover there, and at how welcoming and supportive and efficient people were in turning that around, including Teddy and others. Okay, so that's
really
been
amazing.
great. So what are some of your priorities?
Well, much as I said during the election, I feel like my priorities remain the same. I mean, I'm super interested in dealing with or preparing for climate change. Yeah. I think there's a lot that we need to do as a town and as a society, really, to this is a giant group project, and we have a part to play. We have a responsibility. So I think that there are things that we need to do to to fulfill our responsibility. So climate change, but also, housing is a huge issue for Needham, for the region, frankly, for the country. And I really think that it's incumbent upon us to not push that off.
Yeah.
We need to deal with it. We need to deal with it now. And so I'm really interested in working with the select board, obviously, and the town, obviously, but also with the planning board to the extent that they're interested in my input. And so to really try and address some of that so that we can put together, a plan and move forward in a really constructive way that will result in new, varied, affordable, I hope, housing.
Yeah, no, thanks. These are amazing design challenges. How do both of those relate to inclusivity and greater diversity, housing and the environment?
Oh my gosh, that's a big question. Okay, well, so it's my opinion that we as a society do better in every metric when we are more diverse and when we have input from lots of people. People are really interesting and they all have different strengths. And I think that we do ourselves, frankly, a disservice when we exclude them, but we also do them, more obviously, a huge disservice when they are excluded. So having more people, and this means, having more people of different races, clearly, but also, different ages and different life circumstances and different socioeconomic positions, whatever. All of it comes together, I think, to make life is just more interesting with different people. Whether it's, like as basic as like different food, or different ideas, which can be more complicated. I think it's better to have lots of different people, but we're in a situation now in Needham where, it's hard to get different people to live here because it's, really expensive to do so, but also, in situations, for example, from my personal life, like I have a friend, one of my dearest friends in the world who is white, but married to a Black man, and her children therefore are biracial. And I was like, when I moved to Needham, I was like, please move to Needham and be my best friend. And we'll raise each other's children and it'll just be fabulous. And she was, I can't do that because there's just is not enough diversity in Needham for my kids to see enough of themselves, she was correct. And it's totally legitimate. And I wanted it to be different, but it's not different. And it's not that was, 20 almost years ago. It's not that different today. Yeah. So I guess, you have to, it's hard to make that balance, right? To get enough momentum where people want to be more momentum. It's hard.
How do we get to that incremental change quickly enough to get to that tipping point?
Right, exactly. So that's, so it's important to have something that attracts people, to make living here attractive to people. So, and it's not just racial. Like, when I was a kid, my parents got divorced, and it's like, I grew up in Newton. It's impossible to have two reasonably, income houses in Newton. And I think it is now in Needham too. So, you end up having to move or whatever. Anyway, the bottom line is that there are lots of people, seniors, young kids coming out of college who maybe would like to live here, but we don't offer any housing that would make that attractive to them. And in order to attract them, we need to fix that. Yeah. So, however, building is something that we need to think about with regards to climate. We need to plan our future, not just like build willy-nilly because we think, this developer could do this, or I own this property and so I can do that. In my opinion, it all needs to be sort of planned in a more holistic way. Because I think we want to be intentional about what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So, but I do think that climate is a driver of people moving, across the world, like, the influx or maybe people don't Immigration is a big issue, but we know that people are moving up from South America because climate is making those a lot of areas now very hostile to food production and to various kinds of business that has been in place for generations. It's no longer really feasible because the climate is changing.
Yeah.
And while we think of that as someone else's problem, I think largely, we also have a house, and I'm sure everyone saw the viral video of the house in North Carolina that just fell into the ocean. That same thing is happening on Cape Cod. Once these coastal areas become uninsurable, we're going to have a lot of people who are losing a major asset. We're going to have a lot of people who are moving off of from the coast inland.
Right.
And we have to put them somewhere. So we have to
challenges and crises, but also opportunities. So
absolutely opportunities. I mean, I just think that if we approach it the right way, and I think this is really critical. And actually one of the reasons that I chose to run for select board is that, I think we have a fundamental choice, which is that we can look at all these changes that are happening in our world and we can say, this is really scary and we've got to keep our way of life the way it's always been and fight change. Or we can say, like, this is a really good opportunity. We have a lot of fundamental infrastructure that does need to change over. It's at the end of its useful life, or there is something fantastic and new that is available that will not only help us build smarter, but build sustainably for the future. So I think it's just a choice of being afraid or being hopeful and positive. And I think that climate change, while, it is, scary and disruptive, is also a fabulous opportunity for us to make some of the societal changes that I feel we really need.
I agree. What are your thoughts on community and police relations?
That's another really big question. I think that in Needham, I'll just keep it to Needham. I think that we have a really responsive police force. The past few years have been really disruptive ones nationally and in Needham. We all know that there's some stuff, this happens here, right? But I think that there's been a lot of community input and a lot of listening happening. Yeah. So I guess I would say that, when you go on the Needham town website, and there's a new button, right? It's the first button. It's police, and there's a whole lot of information in there that talks about a lot of the changes that have been made in the wake of a lot of the policing, protesting, and so on that has sort of run along with the pandemic. And I would say that I there's more to do, but there's been a lot of progress made and a lot of self-reflection and a lot of open-mindedness to criticism. Like the police have heard, I think, the criticisms and are trying very hard to respond to that. As you know, because you were there, town meeting approved removing the Needham police force from civil service, which allows, the point of which is to allow the force to recruit more diverse candidates from sort of an open market situation versus a really restricted applicant pool. And I hope that will help to really get to keep a Needham connection for the officers on the force, but also to sort of cast a wider net for people who share, for officers who share the values of our Needham community.
Yeah, I was amazed I didn't know what the old provisions were, but how just the systemically biased was towards folks who had always been in Needham, right? And you can't diversify.
Well,
if you keep drawing from the same pool.
Well, and not only that, I think one of the requirements was that you had to, while you were applying, to be a police officer. You had to actually be living in Needham. And we know that like people who are applying to be police officers for the first time are likely young. And Needham is as we were just discussing, a very expensive place to live. And so it just narrows your pool tremendously. Because if you're living in Somerville and maybe you grew up in Needham, maybe even graduated from Needham High, but you're living in Somerville or Framingham or wherever you're living, and you want to apply to be a Needham police officer, you can't do it. Like you would be excluded. And that just doesn't really sit well. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
We were just saying you just had to know Needham from birth. Well, you can learn Needham and you can know other things and bring them to Needham. Yeah. And some more balance there I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
That is good.
Me too. And also, you know, a little racial diversity wouldn't hurt.
Right across the board on all of our hiring. I know that. Yep. If we see more people, more people of color see people working, people of color working, to your original point of your friend.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, working alongside a colleague of color, or, you know, like one of the things about a diverse community is we all learn from each other. And there's no better way to personalize difference than being a neighbor or being a coworker or what have you. So I think it's a great change.
Thanks. Helpful. Any more thoughts on that or any other topic?
And though some people have reached out to me, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that on the Needham website, there is a page for the select board and it has all of our names and pictures, in case you're not sure. And there's a phone number there, although personally, it's easier for me to respond to emails. So my email address is there as well. And so if people want to reach out with concerns or ideas, they can reach me that way.
There's multiple ways to look. That's all right. You know, I've used that with the town manager, with Kit Fitzpatrick, and select board members, and the response is amazing. So I encourage everyone to do that. We do live in a participatory democracy.
Yes.
Thanks for leading in your voluntary element of democracy as well. And with that, I think we'll wrap it up. I think that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for answering all of our initial questions here. We'll be back for more, and I know you'll have a lot of good answers and ideas.
It's my pleasure.
And viewers, if you want to learn more about the work of EJN, please visit our website, equaljusticeneedham.org. Again, all one word, that's equaljusticeneedham.org. You can also contact us with comments and suggestions at thishappenshereneedham@gmail.com. Thanks so much for joining us, Heidi, and thanks for those who are watching. Take care.